No intro this time, no special announcement, just going right into it with this one. And well, we'll see how it goes. Honestly, I wanted to do something a little bit more interactive. I don't know. But the issue I have uh currently is that my setup does not support me doing any like gaming stuff or whatever on my channel. However, I did just buy a PC, so hopefully in the future on Twitch and on the live channel, I'll be able to do some like gaming stuff regularly, hang out and talk and stuff like that. But otherwise, going to be talking about some of my more embarrassing moments when I started off YouTube. Some things that I definitely sounded pretty touristy back then. And Hater PW, nice to see you. Thanks for showing up. But while I was making the plans for this, my parents came back from their trip and actually brought some like lemon mochi back for me. And ironically, they didn't even go to like Japan or anything. They just happened to stop at a store that was like the US's biggest candy store or some shit. So pardon the crinkling and all that, but I'm gonna try this. I've been waiting to get into this to see what this is gonna be. They're a lot softer and squishier than what I would have imagined. You know, if I had to describe that, and this is just me being a little bit weird before we get into like old videos and stuff. And I have a couple picked out, but to stop being so scatterbrained, um, hey Gorilla Mar, nice to see you again. Uh, just kind of planning to go over some old YouTube stuff. Is it delicious? Actually, yeah, it's pretty freaking good. Like surprisingly good. Um, it's not overpoweringly sweet like you would expect out of like an American candy, honestly. Um, it tastes like I don't wanna say like lemon jelly, that feels wrong, but like a mild lemon candy. It's actually really good. Hmm. So yeah, I decided to go through and try and pick out a couple of videos for this because I kind of wanted to go back and there are some things from like 2 years ago that I just don't agree with anymore. And I specifically picked out videos to go over that are either a little bit embarrassing or like show the kind of setup I was working with at the time, or that I just flat out disagree with. So let me pull up the list here. And so we have one about how not to summon a demon lord, an April Fool's video I made, that maybe or maybe not. The very first video I ever did for my like anime content and stuff. And then one where you actually get to see the old setup. And the audio and visuals are not good, to be entirely honest. It's not a very good look for me. So, as a mode of comparison, and here's hoping because this is why I have gotten a PC so I can do better streaming stuff. Some of the stuff will play properly. And here's like just an example. One of my more recent videos that I am very happy with. In fiction, characters can be divided by whether they undergo change or not. Dynamic characters are those that change over the course of a story, and static characters are ones who stay the same. Change. I won't play too much of this because this is, again, one of my most recent videos. And I'm sure it's probably been viewed a lot more times than what this stream will get viewed. Either way, um, I'm happier moving towards like the essay stuff, but that's not what I started out doing. I started out doing reviews and commentary and even got into a little bit of the culture war stuff, which I'm not proud of. I quickly realized that Crusade of the Day, um, I don't want to keep up with constantly having to hate on things. So that all said, I think it's about time to. How about we start out with like the very first video I ever made here on, of all things, Licorice Recoil. So I gotta copy this, move it over to. So professional. I should have had this ready to go, but having tons of open tabs. All right. Close that out. Pull the stream tab back up. Do what you can to stay out. Yeah, yeah. Really love your video about Subaru and Rudius. I really liked it and subbed for the quality. Yeah, that's this stream is a little bit geared towards like uh kind of what I've learned about YouTube. So starting right off the bat with my very first video ever. Let's pull this up. Talking about what am I actually really thank you. Thank you for showing up at the little bit, or for a little bit anyway. I appreciate it. But right off the bat, you're going to see how much different my videos have been or have gotten, or how much I've improved from a couple of years ago to now. And maybe we'll go into some of my old gaming videos that were not very good later in the night. Hey, Bat Sauce, what's going on? So, back in July, my feed started blowing up with images of a certain protagonist from a series I had no idea was even coming out. So, I used to do the whole like dubbing thing for the for the videos, and it's a lot of work, at least the way I was doing it. And I eventually dropped it because I realized there wasn't a whole lot of advantage to it. And now part of it was that my videos ended up being uh fairly boring. And it's not like I'm ashamed of what I did with this one. You can tell that like there were times where like I actually put in the effort to try and make it entertaining and fun to watch, like memeing and stuff on it and making jokes and all that. But the like dubbing with the lettering and all that at the bottom, whole lot of work that wasn't worth the effort. And you can tell I didn't get my screen proportions right. And no background music either. That was another thing that I really should have started doing sooner in YouTube because it does help sort of mask some of the audio flaws, and it also makes it a little bit more entertaining for the viewer. And that's one of the big things is that I've learned is making sure that you're adding some sort of entertainment value to what you do on YouTube. That just so happened to be Chisato from Licorice Recoil. And honestly, at first, I wasn't really interested in it. It just seemed like something that was going to be some very girly action series that had bad animation, stupid story, and only relied on cuteness and fluff to get you through to the end of the series. Normally, when you get an anime that focuses so again, right off the bat, maybe while we're doing this, I should find some thing to put on in the background so it's not just completely dead. What about this? No. Yeah, let's go with that so that it's less crazy. So one of the other things is just trying to get into the topic of the video fast because you need a good hook, and I would ramble a lot at the beginning of these videos.
Primarily on gunfights, you get something that has really bad animation. Your characters are static, holding down the trigger on a fully automatic weapon, and it looks like crap. Cringe. At least that.
So you can tell at that time that I hadn't watched very many anime that actually like used guns, because the more and more I've seen in it, the more and more I've disagreed with that opinion of stuff. Now it still does sort of hold up, but I was kind of grasping at straws for that one.
That's been my experience with guns in anime, anyway. There was also the issue of seeing an overwhelmingly female cast in the series.
Culture war influence right there. Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I started to like try and like distance myself from just like keeping up with the hate of the day sort of thing. One, it's a huge waste of energy trying to constantly be like on the woke, this sucks because yeah train. Even though it did get views if you were a big channel, if you're a small channel, you are yeah, it's I've actually been doing this for almost 2 years, Star Wars dog. In December, it will be 2 years since I started doing YouTube not full time, but like regularly.
And that made me feel like this could just be some really girly, sort of bad animated action series like Girls Frontline or some shit like that. And that's not to say that having a largely female.
And you know, there's another touristy thing to say is I've never actually watched Dolls Frontline. Getting close to my hope would be to try and shoot for 1,000 by the end of the year, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. I got a massive boost because of my video essay, A Tale of Two Protagonists. That was really helpful for the channel, and kind of why I've transitioned to doing more like video essays on anime rather than just reviews. It's also more fun for me to engage on an intellectual level and like talk about specific topics.
Cast is a bad thing. I mean, shows like Claymore and ReZero exist, and
I have since making this video read all of Claymore, and it's fantastic, by the way. But I mean, at the time, the female cast critique was a little bit more real. A lot of the times you would see it was pretty much like front and center of entertainment pop culture debate.
I actually really like ReZero. It's one of my favorites. So when I went into this, mostly out of spite, because I just had to see why people were blowing up my feed.
You hated the Claymore manga, huh? Interesting. I'd be curious to see what specifically about it you didn't like. I have my critiques of it as well. It feels like Berserk's younger sister and copied a lot of the same themes from it, but in and of itself, it's still pretty good. The after the anime part sucked. I've never actually watched Claymore. I just read the entire manga, and to be honest, I enjoyed it all the way through. Oh, sorry.
With memes and pictures of Chisato being best girl. I expected this to be something that was just entirely a gag show that I would laugh at for being bad. Especially after I found out it was being produced by A1 Studios, who produced my least favorite anime of all time, Fairy Tail.
I'm gonna have to correct that now. Fairy Tail is no longer my least favorite anime. I don't know if it should be Tokyo Revengers or Rent a Girlfriend. I used to hate on Fairy Tail way too much back then.
So going into this, my expectations were that the series was going to consist of some poorly animated gunfights, along with a non-existent story that relied on like friendship and love and happiness the whole time. Again, not that those things are necessarily bad. Those themes occur in a lot of series. Like the whole friendship thing is one of Naruto.
I don't know if you can tell in this either. Too many unsatisfying endings to characters and just a lot of stuff that is too much for text. Hey, I'm working on a video now that's kind of along those lines as far as foreign fiction and what ends up being satisfying to them might not be satisfying to others and why that is. I think this is going to come down to that case. I enjoyed Claymore all the way through. It would probably take me a dedicated video in order to go through, or a reread in a dedicated video to sort of like go through and talk about it again. But needless to say, I feel like I don't feel the same about it. But that's just me.
Another one of my favorite animes. Well, if you've seen the series, you'll know I was kind of wrong about that.
Right, I had a point. I was going to make a point about like my audio and how I found out that if you don't push your mic super far away, there's less echo. Now, it also doesn't help that StreamYards can really sabotage your mic. But hey.
Honestly, what Licorice Recoil turned out to be was far better than what I'd expected going into it. Now, the series still does have the issue of characters with machine guns just sitting there and statically spraying bullets in a straight line, but
maybe I shouldn't have paused right then and there. To be honest, I don't know what I was on about with that one, because that seems like a really big nitpick, and I try to avoid those now. But sitting in one place and firing a gun is a little bit more logical than I was giving it credit for here. It's not like you have better accuracy. It's just in an animated setting, it seems like it can be a little slow at times if you're just standing in one place firing.
Major gunfight has some sort of beautiful visual appeal to it that makes it really just fantastic. And I can be a real snob about animation sometimes. Like, if something's even just slightly off, it will piss me off. And there certainly are moments.
And there's yet again something else that I mellowed out over the last 2 years on that front.
It's where the animation hurt my soul. There's this point in episode 2 where the car does this ridiculous flip that defies physics.
Yeah, this one I actually died laughing when I first saw it. Let's see if I can try and like the physics on this car was just, again, it's a nitpick. It doesn't really affect the whole story, but it's so over the top. And they're trying to keep it like a really like grounded sort of realistic setting for the series that it was something that made me laugh uncontrollably.
But that's beside the point. You get to major action sequences and the fist fights, the gunfights, all of the choreography, the animation, it all comes together really well. And it makes this sort of smooth and seamless fight that is very visually appealing to me. Another huge point going for Licorice Recoil is that it's not just some cutesy all-girls series. I mean, they actually took time.
Yeah, I don't know where I got that assumption from now. The promotional material did sort of give that that vibe. Like a lot of what was getting shared were like the happy upbeat moments. But otherwise, this series could get really serious and dark at times.
Time to write a good story for this series. You get to watch Chisato struggle with her own moral conundrums. You get to watch Takina develop emotionally, from the stone-cold, emotionless killer she is at the beginning of the series, to someone who actually can take a joke and have some fun at the very end. And don't even get me started on the series' antagonist, Majima. The guy is just a fantastic villain. And while the story isn't...
And that's one thing I actually will say has aged very well about this series, is I feel like it does the sort of... I know gray morality is kind of like a taboo thing for a lot of people who are like involved in pop culture and stuff, but I think this one did a really good job of like presenting the two sides as being somewhat unjustified in what they were doing. I mean, you had a government agency creating child soldiers to fight terrorists. And then you had a terrorist fighting to expose the government for their corruption and all these things that they were doing using children to fight their battles. It was a very interesting dynamic, and the character stuff does still hold up even 2 years after the hype has faded around the series.
Isn't the greatest thing in the world. It is still far better than what I had expected going into the series. Now, I will give it this fair caveat. I like long and deep series. Now, Licorice Recoil certainly does have that deep aspect with the Allen Institute and with DA, but
I guess what I'm saying here, deep is probably the wrong word for it, and I do this quite a bit, is I'll say something that makes sense to me, but when I look back at it, I'm like, all right, that can probably be misinterpreted. What I mean by this is I like series that have some sort of staying power to them. Like you can make multiple seasons out of them. I like longer, more detailed stories, which is why I'm perfectly fine reading 40 volumes of ReZero, because that satisfies that itch.
It's still only 13 episodes long, and there's only so much story you can fit into those 13 episodes. I feel like 13 episodes is the right length, though. The pacing is correct, and there's enough information there that is only touched on as it is needed to be. Which is fine. They have enough material already to do future seasons. And the story is contained enough to where if they don't get a season 2, or any other future seasons for that matter, it ends on a good note. Everything feels complete.
So that's one thing. I'm still 2 years later, and all we've gotten is some slice of life side story announcements. Like this was one of the most popular series of 2022, and it still hasn't gotten a sequel. Again, you have the whole issue that you have multiple issues actually that haven't been resolved, like the Allen Institute still being this shadowy organization. Majima is still at large fighting to expose the truth of the world. And there's some other things we're probably going to see. I have a feeling we will eventually get a season 2, but I'm just surprised it hasn't happened yet.
You don't feel like you've been left on a cliffhanger after 30 episodes. Overall, this series might not rank as one of my all-time favorite animes, but it definitely hits high on the list for this year's anime. I think you'll find you'll actually really like this series. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. That's just my personal opinion on it. There are some things that I do have major complaints with about the series, but that's for the spoiler-heavy section that comes after this. To conclude this, A1 really blew me away with this, and I was not expecting that. And now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty details of the series and really pick at the things I like and don't like. This section is going to contain spoilers, so if you don't want the series spoiled for you, you should probably stop watching right now.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
So,
yeah, that was another thing is still like right off the bat trying to find exactly where I wanted to position myself as far as like being more serious or being more funny, trying to script my videos to have a little bit of humor in them to sort of provide that entertainment value. I still do that to some extent, but I don't try and force it like I used to.
I guess we could start with the main characters then, and there's really nothing I have a problem with on that front. The dynamic between the stone-cold Takina and the very bubbly and giddy Chisato works.
Also, I feel like as far as sorry, distraction. I feel like as far as my speech patterns have gone, I've gotten at least a little bit better. Like I can talk a little bit more consistently. I've always read off of scripts when I've been doing videos, at least for the most part. And we'll see later when I start doing some of the videos where I don't use background footage, or where I'm actually on screen for my videos. Just how bad some of that can get and how many jump cuts I had to make. I'm trying to figure out what I was going to say. Oh, God. Been suffering for like 2 weeks with this cough. Just won't go away.
Very well. Because on one hand, you have Chisato keeping the series from drowning in its own drama, and on the other hand, you have Takina grounding the show in reality and challenging Chisato's idealism.
I need to take a cough drop. The last one I have here. This is, I don't really think there's a whole lot to comment on in the rest of this. Because this is sort of just like running through things that I still agree with now. I still like Majima as a character. I think all of the arcs in this series, like the abilities that they all demonstrate, are very well done. I'm trying to get to the point where... So yeah, I mean, like, this one was... I picked this one because this is the very first video I ever made. And I had plenty of time to try and set this up. I ended up actually taking a lot more time than I usually would to try and make this video. Specifically... Okay, here's the moral nitpicking of the...
Out by the fact that it's almost never questioned. The only time that takes orphan children into the series are entirely to do with certain sections of the story and the way they were written. And I should address them in order. The first being the issue of DA itself. DA is this covert anti-terrorist organization that takes orphan children and turns them into soldiers.
Are you serious?
The series seems to want you to disregard the morality of using children to fight terrorists. You can figure that much out by the fact that it's almost never questioned. The only time
Yeah, that is one thing I feel like it's still kind of a nitpick even today. And if I were to make this review today, I would probably leave that part out. But it's one of those things that you have to talk about, like, why does nobody ever bring up the fact that, like, Japan's using child soldiers to fight terrorists?
Morality of DA is questioned is once at the very beginning of the series, and it's only done in a passing comment, making it more like a joke than any sort of serious moral critique of a government body that secretly abducts and trains orphans to fight terrorists. They even go so far as to like brainwash these kids into worshiping them like some all-powerful parents. There's also the issue of DA never being depicted as doing anything criminally wrong. Sure, they might have stabbed Takina in the back over a morally correct decision to save a comrade.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest flaw with this series as a whole, is the ending.
Corner. He has control of their supercomputer, Radiata, and he is using it to lock them out of all systems and broadcast his declaration of war to the nation. He's effectively won at this point. He's exposed Licorice as a group of child assassins stationed around the nation in order to contain crime and make people believe their nation is safer than it actually is. Unfortunately for him, there's a third-party hacker that blocks him out of Radiata and resets everything. Then, they use their skills to fabricate a fake newscast to make it look like everything Majima had just said and done was all part of a theatrical performance to announce a new local attraction event. And people believe it without any sort of doubt whatsoever.
Gotta do dad stuff. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging out for a little bit. I appreciate it. But yeah, that's probably like my big critiques of this video are I got my just like the screen bounds pretty much. Audio quality, the dubbing doesn't really help, and maybe using a little bit more relevant footage to sort of emphasize the point. That's something I've focused on doing now, is when I'm talking about a series, I can put this down now. I can go like that. There we go. Is when talking about a series, like someone pointed this out at one point, in a different video about how, like, I mentioned a fight. It was actually the Bleach video I did. I mentioned of the fight between Ichigo and Byakuya as being somewhat underwhelming because I feel like the visual payoff wasn't there. And I never showed any footage of it to demonstrate what I was talking about. And that got me thinking, like, instead of just trying to loop some background footage while I talk, why not use the background footage to sort of emphasize what I'm talking about? It's a lot more work to do it that way, to go find specific clips. It means I don't get to goof off as much, but it certainly makes me feel better about the content I've put out lately, using specific examples. So I guess the question is, do we go to the next video, or sorry, for the next video, because really I've kind of covered everything out of that I wanted to talk about, picking apart my own work. The one where probably my most memeable moment has come from, or the one that I'm probably going to have a lot more to say about. Because let's face it, I've been doing this for 2 years now. I don't think every single one of my takes is good, especially the culture war stuff. I would go over the culture war stuff, but I don't think anyone really wants to hear my old, like, opinions on that. Like, you know, the same thing you hear out of every culture war topic channel, like railing against the quote unquote woke and all of that, that I no longer want to fuck with, because it's just another divisive issue. Like, you can point out why these things suck without calling them woke, okay? Without getting into identity politics or any of that stuff. And I want to avoid that on my channel. Kind of have a hard rule about no politics or any of that stuff, because at the end of the day, I want this channel to be entertaining. I want my videos to be some stuff that people actually enjoy watching, rather than they just come to watch because it's the next thing to be outraged about. So you know what? I think we'll go with my most memeable moment, or the one that I ended up having the most memeable moment out of, because I actually used a clip from this in a video somewhat recently. And we are going to get a look at what we're gonna have a look at what Crimson's setup used to be back before my room remodel, and the shelves, and actually having a proper place to put all my books. I could probably dig through my Twitter and find the old the old dresser I used to put all of my books on over in the corner. It would be over there, actually. It would have been over there. But I don't know. Maybe that's something for another time. Either way, it is weird to look back and, like, see the unfinished room. Like, also the change in position. So right now, where I am facing in the video would be, I'd be sitting over here, and the camera would be facing that way. So this wall behind me would have been off to my left. And honestly, I like this setup more because I feel like there's a whole lot more room. I used to have like a desk that came out into the middle of my room, and yeah, it also doesn't look very good with all that stuff hanging off my shelves there, does it? The fucking dead fish glaring.
Have you ever found a series that you knew you probably should?
I should mention, this is my video on the 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you. I'll let past me talk about it, okay?
Shouldn't like, but you still did. Like, you knew that it wasn't all that great, but you still couldn't manage to pull yourself away from it. And then because you can't pull yourself away from it, it becomes your guilty.
Oh, that's something. Where's the music? Let's see if I can point this out about like audio quality and why having music and stuff is actually pretty helpful when you're doing commentary videos like this.
Pleasure. Well, that's me with the 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you.
Let's just
Away from it, it becomes your guilty pleasure. Well, that's me with
You hear the hum in the background? That's just static noise from running fans in this room. That is why having the background, and it's always like, it always makes me cringe to go back and listen to my old audio because it's more echoey. It's not as crisp. I didn't take as much time to like try and sort out my audio. So I was like, let's just slap a video together and go. But I think ultimately that's kind of how everyone starts, is at some point you just got to go and get in there and learn it yourself.
the 100 girlfriends who really, 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 really love you.
Maru realized that no
Again, forgetting about the screen bounds. Oh, and another thing, I didn't have Photoshop when I first started doing YouTube. So my thumbnails, I literally made them in my video editor and then screenshotted the thumbnails, and they came out awful. I mean, not that my thumbnails are particularly amazing now, but
explanation would ever be enough to save him from this humiliation. The misunderstanding was as deep and dark as the gaping pit of despair that swallowed his soul.
Logically speaking, I know that this manga should be the bane of my existence.
that's way too loud. I should turn that down again now that I've pointed out the fact that like my audio quality was atrocious. And because I have to point this out, because recently on my live channel, when I was doing my Saturday show, me and a couple of other guys went over someone talking about Dandadan, and I pointed out the fact that their audio quality was abysmal when they were recording. And I don't know how it's behaving through Streamlabs or StreamYards, because sometimes it decides it wants to mess with my mic and give me awful audio for no reason. But when I'm recording, I can hear the difference between then and now. Like I can pinpoint. Like I would have to go and like listen to a couple of videos to figure out exactly when it was that I transitioned over to doing things differently than what I was doing that caused all the echo and the background noise. And you know what? I should probably... You know what? Let's switch it up. Let's go with something different. There we go. So more mochi while I let some of this play out.
Is a dumb harem manga that exemplifies my biggest beef with anime at large. The fact that everyone gets bitches but me. I mean, poorly disguised excuse.
You know what? I finally figured out what this reminds me of. This is a completely off-track thought. I finally understand the reference I need to make, or the reference I want to make about this. It's like a lemon-flavored marshmallow. That's what it tastes like. I don't know why my brain couldn't process that earlier. This stuff tastes like a lemon-flavored marshmallow, and it's great. Sup, JM? Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it.
Excuses to bombard a male character with personalities. It's by no means the kind of excellent story.
There's a little bit of the tourist in me coming out. The shonen bro. Because I used to be one of those guys who would talk about like fan service being the worst thing ever. Now I don't fucking care. I do still have my criticisms of it. I feel like overly gratuitous fan service stories aren't for me. But I don't mind seeing it. Like Fairy Tail, the issue with it is not that it decides to go be very fan servicey at times. The issue with it is that I just don't like the story and the animation, which are like the two most integral parts of a series to me. I mean, obviously I focus. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's characters, and then story, and then animation. So two of the most integral parts of the series to me. Back to the point. Back then, I was pretty much saying all the same things that like piss me off now. When I see people like complain about like a fan service shot in an anime or a manga or something, I'm like, are you that terrified of some cleavage? It reminds me of the story where Assassination Classroom actually got banned from certain public schools in Florida simply because one of the teachers in the class has a bit of cleavage showing. She got some huge personalities, as I say in this video. I wish I could go back and slap this version of me, you know. Which is but me. I mean, poorly disguised excuses to bombard a male character with personalities. It's by no means the kind of excellent storytelling you would get from the top of the genre stuff like Love is War, but for some reason I still can't manage to break away from this series. On a more serious note, I picked this one up because I saw the title and the first thought that went through my head is, there is no way that this is any good. So there have been 2 times where I have picked up a manga because of this, or an anime, or both. There have been 2 times where a story's synopsis has had me in disbelief, and both times I've ended up absolutely enjoying what came after. 100 Girlfriends, that I'm talking about right here, right now, and Dandadan, which only a couple more days, people. Only a couple more days. I just had to find out. Well, hot diggity dog! This series caught me by surprise. For what it's worth, 100 Girlfriends fully... Okay, yeah, that one was pretty cringy. That one was... Ooh, okay. It embraces the absurdity of its own premise and throws any attempt at serious storytelling out the window. And that is the only reason this series has any amount of entertainment value. If it, even in the slightest, tried to be a serious story, the whole thing would fall apart. But the fact of the matter is that it is a rom-com that survives entirely on how unhinged and nonsensical its plot lines are. We're talking solving climate change with hairballs, parodies of Your Name, which, by the way, is one of the best anime movies ever made. Yes. A little too much information on that, but this is pretty much a lot of what the video is. It's just me talking at the camera. And one of the things that I realized while doing these sorts of videos, and like I wanted to move away because I was worried about like eventually hitting the monetization marks. I didn't want to like have content get hit because of the video footage I was using. Now it's kind of whatever. I did have one copyright issue on a video that I can't like make any money off of because I made a Sweet Home Alabama meme for it, which is unfortunate because that video ended up performing decently well. But yeah, I quickly found that like I quickly ended up feeling like I didn't have the the skill to be on screen at all times. I realized when I'm delivering commentary, I need to be reading it from a script because I write better than what I formulate my thoughts right off the top of my head. Okay, gives me a chance to reflect. And yeah, this probably would have been back before I grew my hair out. I just realized that. I probably still had short... This was before I went full surfer bro. And how to get them with waifus. And lots of them. Seriously, you've got pervy waifu, tsundere waifu, mute waifu, science waifu, hungry waifu, masochistic waifu, MILF waifu, arrogant waifu, submissive waifu, shy waifu, Murica waifu. Okay. For all the effort I put into trying to get that to work, it was not worth it. What I should have done is just edited all those images together and just slid them across the screen. But no, I had to do it individually because I'm brilliant like that. Yeah, I chose the hard way on a lot of things.
Okay, enough. If you have a type, it's probably going to be in this series. And again, the series doesn't just limit itself to something that's somewhat realistic. Each character's personality is so outlandish and quirky, you wouldn't believe any sort of staying.
So the end of this video is pretty much the thing that has been like one of the I won't say like the biggest meme because I kind of helped propagate it, but it definitely spawned some interesting opinions of me. And I don't know if Ronnie will ever hear about this, but this is where the clip that spawned Ronnie's hit piece on me came from. The
power, and I see it getting memory hold after the novelty of its absurdity wears off. And my one complaint is that right around chapter 51, things start to get a little weird because, yeah, there's the whole cousin thing. What the hell, Japan? Incest is wincest, I guess. I give this series.
So yeah, that is the origin of the clip that I usually use to meme on myself.
Incest is wincest, I guess.
And I reused that in a recent video and extended it out because I was talking about Yuki Suo and Alia sometimes hides her feelings in Russian. Yuki being a particular character who a lot of people painted as some incestuous freak, but they kind of missed one of the big points about her, you know, kind of growing up in a strict, borderline abusive home, and her brother was the only person who ever seemed to really be by her side. She's pretty much the forgotten child, and he's the only person who is like allowed to know how much of a psycho she is, and she has to. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. If you really want me to get into the weeds about, if you want to hear me get into the weeds about it, I should say, go check out the that video. I think it's titled "Trolling Through the Fourth Wall," because that really filtered a lot of people out of that series. Looking back on this one, some of the things I can say that I am really glad I moved away from is one, doing videos where I focused mainly on being on screen to try and like preemptively get used to avoiding copyright. Because I'm not very satisfied with many of the old videos I made. Like, as time has gone on, I feel like those videos have been the ones that have aged the most poorly. Let's see. Let's pull up this one. We'll get working on the next. I'll get the next video set up. And then we will go back to talking about that. There we go. Okay, so it takes care of all that. Cool. So one of the things I'm glad I don't do anymore. I mean, I'm on camera now for like live streams and stuff, and I've been all over the internet. Well, not all over, but I've been on plenty of other people's streams, so I'm used to being on camera. I'm not really nervous, and I can talk just fine. One of the things that I wasn't when I started this YouTube channel is very confident. I was always nervous about like trying to put on appearances for YouTube, and being on camera for those videos didn't help with actually producing those videos or even help me get over the issue of confidence. Where was I going with this? I just completely lost my train of thought. So going back to using background footage and more so using it to emphasize what I was saying, I feel like has made my videos progressively better and better and better. actually having the examples there for people to see. Now, I've been trying to like learn some editing tips and tricks and stuff in the meantime to sort of like dress up the way all of that looks, and to like emphasize the importance of different little bits and like isolate them from certain sections of the video. Yeah. Looking back at that one, like, kind of one of the rougher videos I've made, but not the one I'm most embarrassed about today. That would be the next one we're actually going to go into, is the one that is probably me being the most touristy, most like trying to meme on and clown on everything. Yeah, I mean, I still don't like this series, but I feel like, oh, apologies for that. I feel like that cough drop didn't work. Surprise, surprise, right? Been eating them like candy all day. I didn't wonder why they don't work, huh? I feel like I probably would change some of the things I said about that series. I still feel like, as far as how not to summon a demon lord goes, it's not a very tight-knit series. It's not a very well written series. So here we go. One video I think that probably demonstrates my change in attitude towards anime the most.
This has to be the horniest anime I have ever seen. I don't even remember why I tried to watch this show, but it's so much worse than I remember. Look, I don't think it's any secret that isekais can be bad, really bad.
Ironic, because now some of my favorite anime are isekais. And I would actually go so far as to defend the genre. No, I've been monetized for like a month or so now. But I haven't really had like a while. I haven't really had a reason to advocate for memberships and stuff like that, because I'm not really able to give anyone anything in exchange for the membership, which, like, I appreciate the money, but I want to feel like you're actually getting something out of being a member other than just, hey, here's some money for a video you're going to put out anyway. I feel like that's cheap, like that's stingy. So it is available on this channel, and the memberships are like $2 a month. Yeah, and I haven't streamed on here for a while. The only reason I'm doing it today is well, because today's my birthday and I want to do something a little bit more interactive. And I feel like, you know what? There are some of my old videos that I want to go over and talk about that maybe I should critique. So yeah. Congrats. Thanks. I appreciate it. It's funny because I've actually gotten some like super thanks on videos. It's just apparently when it comes to AdSense, you have to make at least $100 in order to collect money from YouTube. I mean, I understand why they're probably doing that. Probably why they're doing that, but yeah, it's
In fact, they make up 90% of all the entries on my most hated anime list. At this point, I'm pretty sure isekai is the...
They no longer occupy that much. I've watched a whole lot more anime since this video has come out. Some of them are pretty wretchedly bad.
Japanese word for where anime goes to die. But there are a few that are just so much worse than the rest. So without further ado, allow me to introduce you to one of the permanent residents at the top of my bad anime list. How Not to Summon a Demon Lord. This show is how I discovered ecchi, a genre of risque animation that dances as close to being hentai as it can, without actually being the spicy material. Basically, it's spicy material, but without showing any of the sex, and anime without showing anything good about anime.
To be fair, I feel like I still kind of feel the same way about ecchi, although I'm not as gung-ho about it. It's one of those things where, like, if you're going to have adult content, quote unquote, actually like fit it in, do the proper due diligence to like make it fit with the themes of the series. Like Berserk is one of the best manga. Or I shouldn't say one of the best. It is the best manga ever, and it has plenty of those sorts of things in it. Same with Mushoku Tensei. It has some very controversial moments, we'll say the least. Okay. They handle that kind of it actually is this an early video? Yeah, actually it's one of like my that's one of like the very first videos I ever made. So like now I probably wouldn't like mention that as like an issue so much. I would probably make a passing comment about it being like I don't care for it, like it makes me uncomfortable to watch this, but I'm not going to go out and rail against it like it's the worst thing ever. Same with gushing over Magical Girls. I would never in a million years watch that show because it makes me outright uncomfortable to watch it, okay? And if you don't know, well, yeah, just leave it at that, okay? Don't ever touch it. That is my recommendation. But it was immensely popular. It was one of the best-selling series of last year. This year, actually? Did it come out in the spring? Fuck, it came out this spring.
Isekai was bad enough. There are so many dog water anime in this genre, it's become the running joke that it's just trash. Throw in ecchi, which is just there to be provocative and not actually give you a good story, and you have a recipe for the worst show ever made. I wish I...
Yeah, that's one thing I do feel like people give too much credit to. The fan service, and much to A Drink with Crazy's point. You can't just praise fan service because of fan service, okay? Like, if you're gonna have it, fine. But at least, like, do it in a way that isn't just blatant, I should say. At least do it in a way that doesn't that makes zero sense, like this series did. In the second season of this series, there's legit a scene where the main character is putting his dick in inside of some robot chick to unlock a door. At the end of the first season, he fingers a demon out of a cat girl, okay? Why did I watch this? It was like a train wreck. And I couldn't look away. Like, I hated it the whole way through, but I needed to know where it was going.
I could forget watching this. Unfortunately for me, there are things that I can't delete from my mind. I can't say for sure that this is as degenerate as something like Redo of Healer, Boku no Pico, or My Life as Inukai-san's Dog, but it definitely feels like it wants to push the boundaries. I mean...
Yeah, all three of those are significantly worse than anything this does. Redo of Healer? Rape fantasy, okay? Boku no Pico? My Life as Inukai-san's Dog? Well, I think you can probably infer from the fact that dog is in the title. Bestiality, okay? Bitch fucks a dog. And you wonder why anime gets the reputation it does, okay?
There's nothing that says good show like the idea of sexual harassment towards minors. But let's get to the synopsis before I start talking.
Oh, fuck. Forgot about that line in here. So, yeah, that presents like one of those very, very weird... that presents one of those like very weird topics to talk about, because you're getting into like the age of consent of fantasy worlds, and you get into like the whole lolicon debate, okay? And the more I looked into that, the more blurred the lines got. with every argument that's being made, and people will argue, well, like such and such is a character who's an adult on the inside, therefore he should be treated like an adult. That is the argument towards Rudius Greyrat, like a reincarnation who retains some memories from his old life. But then you're then catering to the argument of, well, it's actually a 10,000-year-old witch inside of the body of a child, so they're an adult on the end. Yeah, I have a standard for judging that stuff, but fuck, some people just have zero standard. Either way, I don't think that's really a legitimate criticism of this series, because you start weighing some of the things that happen in here. It's uncomfortable, but I don't know where it falls on like legality and morality, because some of it's just... I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm moving on.
The lines this show shouldn't have crossed. How not to summon a demon lord is Overlord's hornier, talentless cousin. The main character is summoned to the world of his favorite video game as his overpowered player character. Instead of Bone Daddy Ainz, we get Boner Boy Diablo. Wow, Diablo, real creative name for a demon, huh? Okay.
Man, the flat delivery on that one. Although I don't think I've changed much on that regard.
So it turns out two girls were trying to summon a monster to use as an attack dog, and they got this horny loner instead. But when they try to subjugate him, it backfires, because of course.
Or via defects of some kind, remain looking like a child, and yeah, it's murky water. Yeah, it's one of the things like you start to get into, because some people will go so far as to say like clearly mature characters are children because they're short. Actually, let me pull this up and I'll show you exactly. I'm going to pull this up, and it should be safe for work. Very safe for work, because the character is from a very popular anime. All right, here we go. I can share this instead. So here we have Uzaki-chan, who her canonical age throughout the series is between 18 and like 22. But because she's short, like about like half the size of the main character, some crazies ended up calling her a child. Even though that's clearly not a child when you look at her. Yeah, getting into that, and I'll leave it at that. Getting into that debate gives me the creeps, because you start to... most of it depends on how the media portrays the character. Yes, that is true. My big delineation for all of this is, one, all shorties are children. Yeah, right? My big delineation that I have finally settled on in order to like deal with all of this is, one, physical maturity, two, mental maturity, as in you are able to make decisions for yourself. And now that the mental maturity thing has varied across the ages. You can look it up. In Rome, it was 30. In Europe, it was 15. Or in Europe, it was as low as 15. Where people were considered mature adults. So, like, if you're going to make a setting in, like, fiction, where, like, 15 is considered the age of majority, like in Mushoku Tensei, I would argue, okay, that's a little, I find that a little odd, but you're emulating an actual historical period, so I'm going to give it a pass. And in Mushoku Tensei, they never actually, like, show anything. It's never... Yeah, it's a whole issue that I'm going to have to get into, and I've had to do a lot of research for that video, and it's delayed it a whole lot. Because I need to be very, very clear with what I'm going to say about that, otherwise it could be taken way out of context. The point is, I think people don't take enough into account when they start judging these things. And that's all I want to say on it, because I don't want to piss everyone off.
Of course, he has an anti-magic item on, and they end up his slaves instead. And thus begins his harem, consisting of...
Especially with Ronnie around. Yeah, well, if he comes and watches the stream, he's gonna have a gold mine. He's gonna have a gold mine of some of my like old videos and stuff. More mochi while we go through some of this stuff.
Of a big titty elf babe named Sheila, and an underage cat girl named Rem, who's got a powerful demon sealed inside her.
So, if I remember correctly, I believe this is one of those settings where it's like trying to emulate medieval Europe or something. So like the age of majority in this world is like 15 or 16 or something like that, and she's like right there. One of those borderline characters, so it's easy to jump to conclusions, I guess you could say.
The plot of this story, if you can even call it that, pretty much revolves around that demon, and the fact that there's a nerdy-looking girl knight who wants to unleash it upon the world. So what does this show do well? So what does this show do wrong? For starters, it's ecchi and isekai.
That was honestly one of my favorite jokes ever to make. So what does this show do well? And then just nothing. For all the effort I've ever put into stuff, I got the most entertainment out of doing that.
Naturally, it's gonna be shit. If I had known that before starting this, I probably wouldn't have traumatized
Oh yeah, the feminist knight in golden armor. I forgot about this. The quote-unquote protector of women.
myself with how bad it is. This is a show that dares to ask the bold question of what would happen if we replaced the plot and character development of a story with erotic scenes that range from sleazy and immature to the kind of stuff that would put you on an FBI list. Now, you might think I'm talking about hentai, but this isn't hentai. Ecchi and hentai are apparently different things. This was an actual show you could find on Crunchyroll and
This is true. It was actually available on mainstream sites.
Funimation. No incognito tab needed. It sits right up against the line that separates spicy material from other things, but doesn't act.
It never actually like showed any like genitalia. It just had some like really blatant innuendos. Like I think there's one scene in one of these episodes where one of the characters gets abducted by like a tentacle monster and it starts feeling her up. And like I said earlier, dude unlocks the door by putting his dick in a robot chick.
Actually cross it. But I get the feeling that it really wants to go all the way. It's as horny as you can get without an incognito tab. So this show lacks plot and it lacks character development. It would be more accurate.
Saying it lacks plot. Sure, why not? It did have a plot. It actually did have like a a story and some level of character development, but like they're not good by any means. I don't know how this series got 2 seasons.
To describe the story of the show as people do things and stuff happens, rather than as a logical chain of events. Plot elements almost all expire too quickly for them to build into something entirely meaningful. And characters are so empty and worthless that it's hard to get invested in what they're going through. It's very bland and uninspiring. It has all the nuance and creativity of a toddler scribbling on the walls with a crayon. I've stepped in puddles that are deeper than this show, and with
Yeah. Oh god. I'm dying here.
with things being that shallow, there's only one thing to keep your eyes on the screen. Tits. It's tits. The show leans heavy on the boobies, and with the overwhelmingly female
Oh yeah, you're going through it with that one, aren't you?
cast being nothing more than
Well, you know why that series got a second season. Because Jeff Bezos currently has the One Ring, that's why.
walking pairs of tits, each one feels like nothing more than a wet piece of cardboard that orbits Diablo for no other reason than that's what you're supposed to do in a low-quality isekai series. But even the most mediocre isekais I've watched have had more logical and thought-out plots than this. I can't stress enough that this is just Tits the anime, but that's just ecchi in general, so this is turning into old man shouts at sky. Even if
Yeah, right there. Yeah, I was gonna say that's the that is the old touristy me trying to be like I don't know, morally upright. At this point, I probably wouldn't care as much. I'd just be like, nice tits. Yeah, she got a nice rank. I probably wouldn't have complained that much. I would have focused more on the fact that the story is abysmally disjointed. I think at some point I do go off about the incest arc.
in moments where the show tries to do something reminiscent of a character arc or a storyline, it's still largely geared towards trying to flash tits in your face. There's an entire arc where the elf, who's only around to
Well, it's basically like bad innuendos the whole time, and like they just sort of gratuitously flaunt it in your face. But I think I overplayed the hatred of that in this one. So, yeah.
provide gratuitous fan service with her monstrous melons, is brainwashed by her brother and forced to leave Diablo's harem against her will. Why she would want to stay with that guy is beyond me, but it happens. So Diablo catches on to it and decides he's going to war for his side piece. Well, it turns out the brother was planning on forcing his sister to have his kids, because that's totally logical. I guess Japan is so desperate to solve their declining birth rate crisis that they're willing to compete with the American South for the title of most linear family tree. Look,
Oh, jeez. Oh, yeah, that's... Look, again, if you're trying to emulate medieval Europe, you definitely got that one right. Everyone in power was related back then. But fuck. It goes down to like the quality of the writing and all of that. Like a lot of these topics can be dealt with, a lot of these things can be done if you're actually going to treat them properly. But this show just, like, the whole point of it is just to be sexual. And I found that largely unappealing. And I should have gone about it better, because now I look back at it and I'm like, you know, this makes me look like a fucking tourist.
Japan, you're better off going with the breeding visas. They've got plenty of horny weebs here in the States teetering on the edge of
I
being-
forgot that was a thing that got circulated about for a little while. Breeding visas. No, I don't think they were actually real, if I remember correctly, but there was a meme that was going around.
wizards that would love to help. Back on track, the elf undergoes no changes in this section in spite of it being largely about her, and it plays no importance in the plot of the rest of the series. It was just there as an excuse to tease you with some tits and throw in a bit of incest for flair. So with women reduced to nothing more than sex toys that orbit the main character, and the plot being short bursts of related episodes that fail to establish any lasting story threads to chain everything together, the show lands
Hold on.
squarely
Did I
in the
misspell something
top
there?
of my related episodes that fail to establish any lasting story threads.
Figgin, every figgin. Oh man. Well, isn't Game of Thrones full of nudity and incest? That would be an example of how to do it. Well, yeah. From what I've seen, I haven't seen it either. I would agree. If you're going to do those things, generally you want to... Here's one that I can speak to. Oshinoko has some incest subplot to it, okay? Because the brother and sister are twins. And they're like, their mother is dead. And the father is a deranged murderer that they don't actually know who he is. All they know, all the brother knows anyway, is that the father set their mother up to be murdered. And the loss of it and everything that goes on after the death of their mother sort of creates this unhealthy dependence that the sister Ruby has on her brother. That's one way to approach it. It's done as an unhealthy thing. Like, Ruby's obsession with her brother is an unhealthy fixation on him. It's not a mutual thing. And she even goes so far as to try and gaslight and manipulate him into feeling the same way. It's kind of a fucked up consequence of some of the awful things that have happened. Same with like Alia-san. You see Yuki trolling her brother in some very extreme ways. She's just trying to piss him off because she derives pleasure from that. And she likes acting out manga tropes. And that's a result of a strict family home that doesn't allow her to have any sort of hobby she actually enjoys. And the only time she ever gets a chance to break mold with Phoenix wanting to smash this. Yeah. Luke and Leia is, again, they didn't even know they were related. So yeah.
This show lands squarely in the top of my shit list. This is just the author's personal wet dream about finally being popular with the ladies, thinly masked with the isekai veneer. There's no depth outside of the elf's massive rack, and there's no intrigue other than the possibility that there might be someone out there with bouncier boobies. It's a hollow and worthless piece of smut fiction that serves no purpose other than to tease you with sexualized content. This kind of fiction is only better than overly politicized fiction, and only for the fact that it occasionally turns out a half-decent joke. But the abysmal writing and casual incest that means nothing to the story is hardly the worst part of this show. It's the fact that this show clearly wants to make light of actual sex crimes that sinks it right down to the bottom of the...
See, here's the part where I would probably like heavily disagree. Because again, this is fiction, and it all comes down to like, how are you going to interpret all of this stuff? And I am pretty sure I got a lot of what I said about this wrong, because I've done a couple of videos on jobless reincarnation that deals with some similar topics about a main character who is not clean, doesn't have a clean record. But the whole point is that this is a dude with some issues, and it's never portrayed in a way like this is exactly how you should be doing things. I don't think this series is either. I think one of the big things about it is the main character is just an awkward shut-in who doesn't know how to interact with people. So some of the things he does are just outright wrong. And in one scene, a bro got fucking drunk and did some stupid shit. Doesn't even remember it. At least, not to my knowledge. So, yeah, I don't think it's fair to judge him for that, which I did.
Sludge Pond, that is the worst anime of all time. Yeah, Diablo gets away with assaulting a woman and even doing questionable things to a minor. Questionable is probably generous. If you did any of the shit that Diablo did to Rem, you'd...
Again, I think we're talking about, like, we're taking things out of the setting and trying to put them in the real world. That's one of the big issues. I'm going to minimize this really quick. Not me. I don't want to do that. It's one of the big issues with, like, trying to talk about Mushoku Tensei is people immediately start trying to apply real world standards to a fictional setting. Like, you cannot really apply real world moral standards and legal standards to Game of Thrones, right? Because it's fiction. It's a completely different setting. And yeah, like, obviously anyone could tell you, anyone with a functioning brain in any way could tell you that incest is wrong. And I could tell you why. But like, in those stories, I mean, you have a completely different setting, a medieval setting, somewhat based off of Europe, and well, it's a lot of fucked up shit that goes on in Europe. Same with Mushoku Tensei. You try to apply real world standards to a fantastic, unrealistic setting of a guy who gets reincarnated into a world with different, frankly, very different standards of how things operate. It's okay if it makes you uncomfortable. sometimes that's the point, especially with like jobless reincarnation. There are things that Rudy does that should make you uncomfortable, that you should judge him for. But the whole point is you're going to watch this character finally, for once in his life, grow up and become a man instead of this little boy focused on pleasure, pretty much. Because he shut himself off from the world in his first life and spent the whole time being angry and paranoid at everyone around him because of something that happened to him in school.
Would most likely end up in prison. But before I delve into this, I want to make one thing clear. I'm not a prude about sexual content in fiction, or even hard topics that are actual crimes. But I have my rules about it. Tasteless and gratuitous sex scenes that serve no purpose in the plot.
I don't know what to say about that one. I can't really remember what you're talking. If it's in Wonder Woman 94 or 84, I wouldn't be able to. Oh, thanks. I forgot.
Other than to cater to certain desires are bad writing. That's a fact. I've watched shows like Konosuba, Jobless Reincarnation, and Berserk, all of which have varying degrees of sexual content. Konosuba employs it for humor. The main character is the ultimate teenage male scumbag who takes every opportunity he gets to try and get some action, but he constantly gets punished for his antics by the women around him because of this. And on top of that, it's not like he ever
Konosuba's brilliant, by the way. I love that show. Talk about a parody with a really good message at its heart. Like, it's a parody of isekai and of like fantasy RPGs and stuff. And the whole like message of it is like, or the whole point of it is you have a band of misfits who ends up being one of the most successful parties in defeating the Demon King's army.
ever does anything creepy, just scummy and perverted. It's also not the centerpiece of the show, even if it does play into it a lot. Konosuba isn't made for you to get off to like an ecchi series is. The Jobless Reincarnation.
I don't think ecchi is technically made for you to get off of either. But some are definitely like borderline. Like I said, gushing over magical girls. Definitely for that BDSM crowd, okay?
Uses it in a couple of ways as well. The main character is also a bit of a skirt-chasing scumbag, but it's part of his existing personality from his first life, and thus makes sense to be there. And his dirty deeds regularly get him beaten to a pulp. And he
Yeah, as far as Jobless Reincarnation goes, Rudy gets the shit beaten out of him by Eris when she catches him. Like, the barn scene, like, locks eyes, and yeah. Sylphie, he never actually intentionally does anything to Sylphie. The one thing that you can point to is the bath scene when they're like 6. He didn't even know Sylphie was a girl at that point, though. So it was entirely accidental. Yeah. And then you want to talk about Roxy. Well, Roxy's just a petite woman. By the time she first appears on screen, she's somewhere between 20 and 30. Although you wouldn't know by the fact that she looks like she's 16. But that's because of her race. She's not human. She ages differently. What else? Oh, I mean, there are some of the older women that no one will really complain about, but everyone kind of like views Rudy as a kid because physically he is a kid. And if you want to try and argue that Rudy is mentally mature, I don't think you're going to actually win that one. Because nothing he does in half of that time is mature. Sure, he should have known better than to do a lot of that stuff, but that's kind of the point. The whole show is about growing up, so.
Even when he does finally get it on, it's a more romantic and plot-critical moment that was built up over something like 16 episodes of the first season. It's a make and break moment for the two characters involved, and helps to catalyze the next series of events in the story that's coming in season 2. And Berserk takes on...
Yeah, since this video was released, season 2 has come out, and there's been yet again another one of those scenes, and they aren't graphic at all. Like, they don't actually show anything. It's just kind of a little bit of lead up, and then a blank screen, and then the morning after. For all of the horny that is in Jobless Reincarnation, it is actually very clean when it comes to the real content.
On some very twisted elements of human nature. Guts lives through some horror story kind of stuff in that regard, especially when he's abused as a young boy. But it's there to show you just how bad the world actually is, and how traumatized and broken Guts actually is. The Eclipse was a depiction of the depravity of the God Hand. Berserk is very explicit, but it's a manga that faces off against the dark horrors of humanity's collective evils and the brokenness in the world. When these hard
Yeah, Berserk is pretty much the... Griffith is meant to be evil, and the things he does are a perfect way to display the fact that he is evil.
topics are presented, it's always meant to make you feel uncomfortable or to make you hate the antagonists. I say all of that to establish a precedent. How you present these topics is very important to how they're perceived. If you offer up a scene with some questionable actions and present it as something that's supposed to be enjoyed, that's just creepy. There's no other way about it. Episode 1 of this show has a scene where Diablo pins the underage cat girl down on the bed. He then starts playing with her cat ears, which in and of itself is a little weird, but she responds to it with what I can only interpret as sexual pleasure. It doesn't end up going any further at this point, but it became clear that things were gonna be creepy. And this is where I realized that this was going to be an absolutely awful series.
You know, that's one of the things that I'd probably have to look back, look into more, because yeah, it's still bad writing regardless of how you want to slice it. But it's one of those things where you start getting into, like I said earlier, you start getting into really, really weird territory when you start to debate it, and you have to wonder, like, one, are there any like real world victims of this stuff? Two, how is it being portrayed? Is it like something that the show wants you to emulate or to reward the character for? I would argue in that scene, it's actually not something he's rewarded for. In fact, if I remember correctly, he actually gets blasted with lightning.
And just resigned to see how bad it could actually get. So I made it through the incestuous elf arc and some very uninteresting harem bullshit. There was part of me that was curious as to how bad this was actually going to be, because it was clear that the author only cared about tits. And I eventually arrived at the big event of the first season. Basically, Nerd Girl Night Lady, the second walking pair of tits, but with glasses, has managed to do some 3D chess and get Diablo to try and fight the evil demon sealed inside the cat girl. She intends to betray him, but not before he finger bangs the demon out of the cat girl.
Now give them hell.
Yeah, I gave up at this point. I didn't even know about the ages at that time. I looked that up after just to confirm my suspicion.
What was that?
I looked that up.
So Diablo, they say. If I remember correctly, the actual player of Diablo, the person on the inside, like the character he made was 30, but the actual character who is operating Diablo, who was playing the game before being sucked into it, was like 17 or 18.
Up after just to confirm my suspicion. It's not even like it's treated as a bad thing. It's just there to tease you with sexual content. And a very creepy and questionable kind of content at that. But I guess that's just an ecchi isekai series for you. Turns out mixing two bad things together doesn't make a good thing. For some reason, nobody ever questions whether it's good or bad that these things are happening in the story.
Yeah, that's... Ooh. Yeah. I'll put that away for now. That's like, as far as like some of my older videos go, I think that kind of wraps up all of like the anime ones I wanted to go over. maybe do one more for the hell of it. So we can get rid of that. Don't really care about that one. We've done that. If I can get this up, maybe I can pull up one of the old. You know what? It's been an hour and 30 minutes. That's about all I wanted to really do for this. Maybe when I get my PC, I'll do some more streams. But for now, I think I'm actually going to call it there. And the reason being is, well, I don't want to spend all night streaming. I have some other things I do feel like doing. I really just kind of wanted to go over and have a chance to hang out with the audience and chat with people while, yeah, enjoying some stuff. Making fun of myself, going over some old content. But I don't like streaming on this channel because it tends to kill my videos. It doesn't push them out as much. It hurts me in the long run. So I'll probably continue doing my live stuff on my live channel. And when I get my PC, I will probably be gaming over on Twitch. I'll be running it on my YouTube live channel as well, but most likely going to be focused mostly on Twitch when it comes to that. Otherwise, well, I will say you can find my other channel at Crimson Live. I should actually pull that up for ye viewers. Just so I can sorry, I'm working on something here. So I should pull up my live channel and tag that. Post that in here so that everyone can find it, because I do go live over there quite regularly. So if you want to catch any of the live streams going over news, anime topics, this week I will be live later in the week. There we go. Finally found it. We'll go. Yeah, so that is to the live channel. I go live there every week, usually Saturdays. This Saturday, though, I will not be able to go live. So I'm going to be doing it a little bit earlier in the week because I want to wrap up summer anime and talk about the upcoming fall season, which gonna have ReZero and Don on. I'm pretty excited about that. That will probably happen Friday, might be early Saturday. I do not know. Either way, I will be over there and on Twitch and on Twitter, which you can find me on Twitter at Crimson Lawson if you want to follow me. I regularly post over there, get into fights, talk about shit. Yeah. I mean, just today I got bombarded by Fellowship fans because I dared point out the fact that no, the Marvel poster doesn't actually have 6 fingers. You know, you're just getting tricked. It's not that eye. Anyway, at Twitch, or I'm on Twitch, Crimson Law 4110. Here on YouTube at my main channel, Crimson Law, my live channel, Crimson Live, and you can find me on Twitter at Crimson Lawson, or updates and other commentary throughout. Otherwise, I will be trying to post a video by Friday. I actually got that recorded this week or today. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap up all of the summer anime that I can. Just about all of them have finished, and look forward to quite a bit of ReZero content. Actually, I'm gonna be probably doing some reactions and such to that. Going definitely the first episode. We'll probably make a long ass video about the first episode, just because I can. Or you know what? Maybe I'll find a way to stream it. Who knows? Hopefully by then my PC will be here, and yeah. Otherwise, maybe I'll set up a Discord at some point in the future, and you know, that might actually be something worth doing. Is like, I like to play Monster Hunter and shit, so maybe like for multiplayer games and such, that might be a decent incentive for memberships, is being able to join in on regular gaming streams. That might be something I do. Either way, that's going to be a wrap for this stream. So thank you to everyone who decided that they were going to be here. Hater PW, Gorilla Mar, Star Wars Dog, Bat Sauce, The Grey Pilgrim. I do Minecraft with Ronnie. That would be funny, actually. I do enjoy Minecraft. Otherwise, probably see ya sometime later in the week. Bye-bye. You know what? Just because